and welcome to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. I'm president of Coast to Coast Equities Incorporated. Today, we're going to talk about non-traditional funding of real estate investments. You don't just have to have a pot of cash sitting around or a mattress full of money to get into real estate. You may have money you don't even know about or have existing property that you can upgrade to better properties. And I have three guests today. They're going to explain how this whole thing works. So let's get started building your solid foundation for real estate investing. On my immediate right, we have Debbie Bannister. Debbie Bannister is Vice President of Exchange Resources Incorporated. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you.
She's an expert in 1031 exchanges. And next to Debbie, we have Karin Hall. Karin Hall is the CEO of UDirect IRA Services.
Yes.
And you are, as your name of your company would say, you are an expert in self-directed IRAs.
Correct.
And next to Debbie, we have Dr. Janice Bell. Dr. Janice Bell is with Private Lending Masters, and she is an expert in self-directed health savings accounts that you may or may not have known even existed. So ladies, let's get into this whole discussion here on being able to invest in real estate without having to just pull out of your savings account or have a big pot of money you've saved up. People may have money they didn't know about. So I'm going to start on the end with Janice. And Janice, I want you to tell us a little bit about health savings account. A lot of people don't even know you can use a health savings account to invest in things like real estate.
Absolutely, Steve. So there's been some confusion. These accounts used to be flexible savings account, FSAs, and the money went away at the end of the year. Right. And probably about 5 years ago, they started having high deductible insurance policies, so the premium's a little bit less, but then you can put away money to use for some of your out-of-pocket expenses, but you get to keep that money. That money's yours. It's in a way like an IRA, and you get to save it for retirement, but you can use it now. And that's the benefit for younger people is you can use it for LASIK for your eyes. You can use it for acupuncture, chiropractic, your copay, things that your insurance might not cover. So there's a whole list that the federal government lists out, and you don't have to get permission from anyone to use this.
Okay, and then and not just funding it by putting money into it, you can actually use those funds to invest to grow that money and
Absolutely.
Use for additional purposes.
So right now you can then, it's traditionally started with your employer, and it's just in a savings account that they've set it up with. Then you can take that account and roll it into an account where it's self-directed, and then you could start investing in real estate. You're not going to do that with your first year's investment because you can only put so much in a year. If you're just starting out, you can put in $7,000 for 2019, and a catch-up for older people, you can put in an extra $1,000. For a family, if you're single, it's $3,500 for the year.
Okay, and so if I build that up to say I do that for a few years, I've got 15 grand or something in there, I can roll that to self-directed and start using it to invest, to grow, and when I retire, I can have a sizable amount of money for the single biggest retirement expense I'm going to have, which is my health.
Absolutely, and they estimate for a couple like $350,000 during your retirement is going to go to medical expenses. So, and the other beauty of that HSA account is once you hit 65, it really is like your IRA. So, you know, I'll tell you a little bit more later about it, but there's a benefit to maxing out whatever your employer is allowing you to put in. Your employer also contributes to that as well.
Great.
So.
Okay, and then Karin, so similar to HSAs, there are the self-directed independent retirement accounts, and some people are more familiar with those, although a lot of people still don't know those exist either.
It's true.
They think all they have is their 401k or that simpler SEP that they have to put into the money markets or put into bond funds or put into mutual funds. So tell us a little about self-directed IRAs and how those work.
So a self-directed IRA is a lot like any other IRA in the fact that they have the same rules, but what's different is the asset class that the IRA can hold. So now with a self-directed IRA, it's stocks. It's not just stocks and bonds. It's property, it's precious metals, it's performing and non-performing debt. Your IRA can be the bank and lend money, so many other things, raw land, commercial properties, lots of things.
Okay, so we use that as an investing fund. Now, the great thing is it can either be Roth or tax sheltered, is that right?
Well, it can be traditional, Roth, SEP, simple, spousal, inherited, and we also do the solo 401k for an individual business owner with no full-time employees. So, and the Roth is the only one that's after tax, and the Roth grows tax-free for life. So the money goes in after tax, it grows tax-free, and as long as you meet these qualifying events, then it comes out tax-free for life.
Okay, so I can have where I don't think I can get into real estate investing because I don't have a lot of money saved up, but I have a 401k and it's got $50,000 sitting in it from a former employer.
Right.
And I left that employer a couple years ago, and it's just sitting there in those same old mutual funds I put into it, and it's just kind of plugging along. I can roll that over to your company, self-directed, and then invest in real estate or notes or anything I want to grow that faster. Is that right?
And that's exactly what our clients do, right? And have for the last 10 years that UDirect IRA has been around, and you've been able to self-direct, by the way, for 44 years, so it's nothing new. So yes, that's absolutely what you do.
So when the real estate market's booming, I can invest in that. When it slows down, I can take it and put it in the stock market. I can move it around and do what I need to with it.
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. Okay, now, Debbie, yours is a little different. So when we may have property we own. We bought ourselves a piece of property. And the idea normally, traditionally, is we're going to sell that property and then buy another property, and we're going to take a tax hit on that when we do that. But there's another way. We can actually use the piece of property we have as our down payment on another piece of property. So explain how a 1031 exchange works.
Absolutely. First of all, I think it's really important to know that this only works for investment real estate.
Right. So you're not your house you're living in.
Exactly. Or even a second home.
Right.
It must be investment real estate. Or real estate used for a productive use of a trade or a business. And so how it basically works is it's a trade, if you will. That's what the tax code references. So for example, you have a property you want to sell. You can sell that and move all that economic factors that are bound in that property over here to buy another property. So if you bought equal or greater to what you sold for, then you deferred all the taxable event. Okay. If you bought less, you still have a qualified exchange. You just may pay taxes on that difference of what that less would be.
And so generally the idea is you want to move up to a more valuable property if you can.
Absolutely. And or people use exchanges for many reasons. Reorganizing their debt position on properties or reorganizing the real estate portfolio. But what it does is it allows you to reorganize so that maybe having one huge asset, you can buy two or three and increase your real estate holdings that way.
Okay, and so as long as we keep doing that and we don't sell, we don't pay the taxes on that. That's what one of our previous guests, Patrick Capel, refers to as swap till you drop.
Yes, exactly.
And we can keep moving up and expanding that portfolio.
Exactly.
So even if, let's say I had a house I bought and I did live in it, and then I've moved to another place and I'm renting that out, I can still 1031 that because it's no longer my residence.
Right. Well, in the last 5 years of owning that property, that dictates what tax code it really qualifies for. So in the last 5 years, if in the beginning you lived in it, say this is year 4 or 5, I mean 1 and 2, excuse me, and then you rented it out for 3 and 4, and you rented and you sold it before 5, then you could even take advantage of both the primary residence and the 1031, the primary residence exclusion and the 1031. But if you had it in the last 5 years and it was maybe all rental, but before that, the 5 years before that was primary, it's totally a rental property at this point.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a bit because I want to talk a little bit about how that works with, say, multifamily kind of stuff. But working back around, so when we get into the self-directed ideas, how do we know, how do we actually make a transaction like this happen? Because we don't actually have the money in our hands. This is through some other organization that's holding the money for us. Is that correct?
Yeah, called a custodian.
The custodian. Okay, so how does that work, Carmen?
Well, when you open an account, the money goes into, the custodian has the money and basically is a go-between between you and the IRS. And so that way you don't have personal possession of the money. Because if you did have personal possession, it would be taxable.
Right.
So the custodian holds the money. And so then when you need to invest or you wish to pay a bill maybe for an IRA-owned asset, you just simply contact us and say, I'd like to pay this bill. And then you give us a written request, something like writing a check out of your checking account. You give a written request to the bank when you want to write a check and the bank disperses your money. Same thing with the self-directed IRA. You give us a written request and your money is dispersed.
So you yourself are not actually the investor, your account is the investor.
Correct. The account is the investor.
And you're just a beneficiary of that account.
Yes, you are. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is that the same way with the HSAs, Janice? Does that work?
Yeah, it's the same way. So the account name, which sometimes includes your name or your number or whatever, is the actual thing on the title, whether it's the note or the property. It's not in your name, and you never touch the money. It goes between. It's like an escrow, really. It goes between other people, and it goes right back into your account, and they never send it to you.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to get a little deeper into how this whole process works and what the real benefits are to people. So we're talking about non-traditional investing in real estate through self-directed funds, through 1031 exchanges, with my guests, Dr. Janice Bell, Karin Hall, and Debbie Bannister, and we're going to be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot more to cover.
If you love them enough to relearn math so you can teach them math, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
You made your house a reality. Homeschooling yourself on loans, color-coding listings, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. If you can ace house hunting, you can do it for retirement. Get on track with tips at aceyourretirement.org.
Hi, welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I am your host, Steve Matley. Today I am joined by Dr. Janice Bell, Karin Hall, and Debbie Bannister, and we've been discussing non-traditional funding of real estate investment projects using self-directed retirement, self-directed health savings accounts, and 1031 exchanges. And ladies, I want to get into a little bit of what are the direct benefits. Why would we want to do this instead of just pulling money out of our savings account and doing traditional buy some real estate? So Debbie, tell us, what's the real advantage of using our 1031 exchange?
The real advantage is, especially if you've owned a piece of property for any length of time, it's not the deferring of the taxes that's the benefit, but it's what you could do with that money that you would pay the government. So it's a lot of tax bills on the sale of a piece of real estate, commercial real estate or investment real estate. If you paid your tax bill, that could be equivalent to a beautiful down payment for another piece of property.
So even long-term capital gains would be 15%, or we could pay ordinary income, which might be 35%.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
But that's not it. You have state.
That's right.
12.3, you have recaptured depreciation,
Okay.
and you also have something called Obamacare. So there's several layers of taxes that could affect a
So that's a
person.
considerable chunk of change that we could be giving up. All right, and so using 1031 exchange, all that money then goes into the new property.
Yes,
So we can buy more,
yes,
okay? Or
Absolutely.
we can fix if we need to.
yes,
Okay, can we do 1031 from a single-family house to a multifamily?
absolutely. The tax code reference that it needs to be like kind,
Okay,
but so many people get this confused that like kind is like a single-family residence for single-family residence, and that has nothing to do with it. It's all about how it's used.
Okay.
So it must be investment real estate, and they can buy anything that's real estate anywhere in the U.S. as long as it's investment real estate.
okay, so now that brings another question up. And let's say I want to buy a multi-unit, I buy a fourplex, okay? But I want to live in one unit and rent the other three.
Okay.
Is that my residence or is that income property?
It can be both, because what will happen is, for example, let me create a dollar figure. So you have a fourplex worth $1 million.
Right.
Each unit are exactly the same. So they're $250,000 a unit.
That's right.
So you sold a piece of property and you sold it for $600,000. You can exchange into 3 units, which is $750,000.
Okay.
And that is the exchange, and then you can live in one unit, and on your taxes it gets bifurcated out, 25% for primary residence, 75% for investment property, and you can have the best of both worlds.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. And that's something I think a lot of people didn't know how that whole thing works. When we get into the whole logistics of this, that's where the rubber meets the road on this. We
Exactly.
figure out how do we make this work for what we want to do. Okay, so Karin, using a self-directed IRA, what's the best benefit to using a self-directed IRA?
I think that it's because your proceeds can compound. So when you sell an asset, the money goes back into the IRA. Well, it's not diminished by tax. So 100% of the proceeds from your assets can go back out into the next deal and work and work and work and grow and grow and grow. You know, maybe then you have a liquidity event, you sell the property, 100% of the proceeds come back, and again, you can use all that money for your next deal. So you can grow your account faster because it's not diminished by tax.
Okay, and what does retirement look like right now in this country? How are we doing on that?
We're not doing so well. I have to say we're just not doing so well at all. You know, we probably have something like a $6.6 trillion deficit between what Americans have and what we need to retire. It's really a crisis.
Okay.
We call it the silver tsunami right now, with 10,000 people turning 65 every day. Every day. So we have a huge number of people turning 65, a huge number of people who are unprepared. And so whoever's watching this program at this time, whatever you do, just go contribute to your retirement account, make a difference, and so that you've got more for later. Because guess what? Not only do we not have enough for now, but we're living longer. And so we're going to, continue to live. In fact, we may actually be working and healthy longer than, or I should say healthy and retired longer than we were working. So we have so much more to prepare for. And I think the younger generations have to be extremely conscious of this, that saving for retirement isn't just, see, it used to be at 65 you would pass away.
That's right.
And so, but now you're going to live till 95, so you need to have enough income for another 30 years. So conventional wisdom of old doesn't apply anymore. The math doesn't work there.
It's a good news, bad news deal. It's good that we get to live another 30 years.
Yes.
It's bad that we run out of money 20 years into that 30 years.
Yeah, let's figure it out right now and deal with it right now, so later we've got a comfortable life.
Okay, and Janice, on your health savings accounts, if I am, let's say, my mid-30s to mid-40s, I'm not thinking a lot about health stuff because I don't go to the doctor very often. By the time I'm in my 70s, the doctor's my best friend. So in between there, we have to think ahead of time. So tell us how this health savings account is better to start kind of earlier rather than later with this deal?
Absolutely, and the power of compounding your money is definitely there. So, and it's actually good to do this when you're young. I mean, these accounts haven't been around that long, but if you have a high deductible, you're going to pay cash for all your doctor's appointments up to that $2,700, which is as low as the deductible can go. With it, you get a health savings account. Now you can be putting that maximum $7,000 a year into the health savings account. Maybe your employer's matching and putting in 1 or 2, so you can only go up to the 7, at the max. But the reason to do it when you're younger is because, number one, you won't have to pay that out-of-pocket expense because you're really not going to the doctor very often. And the second thing is, if you are ever wanting to go back to your HMO or your PPO, you can't contribute to the HSA account when you don't have the high deductible insurance. So it's a year-by-year thing. So the beauty of it would be to get on the high deductible when you're young, put a lot of money into that HSA account, and then while it's in a bank, it doesn't really cost you that much. When you get a certain amount in there, roll it into a self-directed HSA and start buying properties or stock or whatever with those funds. Now they're just going to keep growing till you're older. And the beauty also for a young person is it is a health savings account. You can use it in an emergency. You can use it for your health right now. Acupuncture, like I said, or chiropractic, LASIX, co-pays. It's there for you at any time. Once you retire, it really becomes like an IRA. Whatever you take out that's for non-medical, you would pay tax on it as normal income.
So we can use it for non-medical if we're in a pinch. If we're retired and we don't have enough.
But if you're under 65, you're going to pay a 20% penalty.
Right. Okay.
When you're over 65, you can take it out and you're going to pay the regular taxes,
Regular
but without
taxes.
the penalty.
Right, but if we really were in a pinch and we didn't have enough in the retirement, we actually have a fallback there, even though we got to pay the taxes on it.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned something important there, and that is we can't do the self-directed HSA if we have a low deductible insurance through our employer.
Right, you have, and more employers are kind of offering this. I've been on one for, about 5 years, but when I first started, I had no one to ask because no one else I knew was doing it. Now more and more of my friends are saying, we just kind of got forced into this high deductible with an HSA. What do I do with it?
Yeah, the
So they're asking.
smaller employers cannot keep up with the price of the low deductible health insurance. They
Right.
just can't do it.
Right.
The big national companies can, but they have the buying power. But the smaller ones can't, so they have this option to do that, and now they have the self-directed HSA that can come in to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, and our medical costs are all going up. So this is the time to start compounding it and making it grow more than it's going to grow, with interest in your bank.
And that's the key for both the health savings and for the IRA. If we think we can retire if we have $2 to $3 million in the bank, that's all we need to retire on. That may not be the case in 30 years. Things have gone up a lot in between. So fuel prices go up, food prices go up, rents go up, housing prices go up, everything goes up. And what we could retire on 30 years ago is not what we're retiring today. There's no reason to think that we could retire in 30 years from now what we think we can retire on now. So it's important to build those up. And the same thing with the 1031s, we can move into more valuable properties.
Exactly.
And now we have equity in those properties we could pull from if we really needed to also.
Exactly.
So if we did this right, we'd have a retirement account that we've built up through actively managing it, not just relying on some mutual funds. We'd have a health savings account that we built up for when we need it the most when we get older. We're going to have a portfolio of real estate we built up through 1031 exchanges, and we actually have resources where we don't have to rely on Social Security or a pension to keep us living, which probably won't be enough when we get there.
Yeah, I love rentals, and so I think of how can I replace that income with the net rent that's coming in from my rentals. It's just a
Yes.
replacement, so that would be, and that's it, because it's rent tenant being paid, so it's always coming in, flowing in, just like every month, just like your paycheck. Your tenants really work for someone else so they can work for you.
Right. We're going to take another break. When we come back, what I'm going to do is wrap up, and you're going to give us your best tips for people when they're looking at doing these kind of transactions and how to use your services. This is Building Solid Foundations. We've been talking about non-traditional investing into real estate using other than just cash. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. We'll see you in a minute.
If you love them enough to relearn math so you can teach them math, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
You made your house a reality. Homeschooling yourself on loans, color-coding listings, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. If you can ace house hunting, you can do it for retirement. Get on track with tips at aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today we've been talking about non-traditional funding of real estate projects. And ladies, before we wrap this up, I want to touch on something we talked about during the break a little bit. Somebody mentioned a triple threat on the taxes. Can you explain that to us? How does that work?
Okay, so it works with the HSA account. You are putting your money in pre-tax because it's taken out from your employer. If you write a check and make a contribution, it's not really pre-tax, but when it's coming from with your employer and your paycheck, it's pre-tax.
Okay.
And then it's growing tax-free, and then when you pay only on the contributions. You pay tax on the contributions later when you take it out, but not on the profit.
Okay, and if you use it strictly for medical expenses,
Right. Then
we
you're
don't
not
pay
paying tax
at
on it. So there's you're skipping tax 3 times.
Okay, and that's a good deal. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's
to
a good
know.
deal.
All right, so where do we find information on this? So on the HSAs, where are we going to find information on this, Janice?
There's a lot, even just by Googling, a lot of information different companies put out. Your employer only has the information really of how to put it in and what goes with that, but if you want to know how to use it, and several self-directed companies have an HSA account in addition to the IRA accounts that they have. My suggestion is you keep it with your employer when it's small and it's building up, and it doesn't stay with your employer in terms of rolling it over. What we found is if your employer changes insurance, that HSA kind of gets kicked out and you're allowed to then roll it together so you can put it in self-directed. And then the employer just starts over with a new, say they go from Aetna to United Healthcare, that HSA account you got from the year before is now yours to invest with, which is different than what an employer would do with an IRA.
Okay.
They would keep control over it.
Okay, and you have a meetup, a group, Private Lending Masters, where
Yeah.
they can come actually kind of talk to people and talk to you about it if they want to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then let it grow just with interest until you have enough to invest.
Okay, and if they want to find you, how are they going to find you, Janice?
So Private Lending Masters is on Meetup in San Diego, and that's how they'd find me. And my company is Wise Wealth University. I have a Facebook page, easy to find.
Okay, great. And then for the self-directed IRAs, Karen, how do we find information on that? Because there's a lot of, I think there's some misinformation on what you can and can't do with it.
Yeah, quite a bit of misinformation. I think it's like the best kept secret, and it can be mysterious to people, but that's what we're here for, is to help clarify. So you can call us at UDirect IRA Services, and our website is udirectira.com, and we're here to help with that. But if you want to look up, like, where can you find it? Of course, you can Google it, but also you can go to the IRS's website. I mean, go to the source, right? So irs.gov is the website. Publication 590 talks about the traditional and the Roth IRA. 590A is how you put the money in. 590B is how you get the money out. So you can go to the source and learn about those two types of IRAs and their rules directly from the IRS's website.
Okay, or they can contact you and you can help explain some of that to them.
Exactly,
Right?
that's what we do all day.
Some people get very intimidated by reading the government publications because
It's actually not bad to read.
Right,
I thought I was really afraid, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall asleep. But it was very readable, very readable.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then for 1031 exchange, Debbie, where do we find information about that? Because that's a thing a lot of people don't even know you can do.
Exactly. And people surf the web, try to get information, and by the time they come to me, they're just full of all these erroneous ideas of what they can and can't do.
Right.
So I really recommend, if they have questions, it'd be my pleasure to help them, answer them. Go to IRS's website because it's straight from the horse's mouth. But the IRS code, the 1031 code, it's a little hard to interpret from the IRS website.
Okay.
So it would be my pleasure to help answer those questions.
Okay, and in your experience, do a lot of real estate agents, are they up to speed on
No.
these kind of things?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Okay, so you
I've
want to
heard
do your own
agents come to
homework.
my club to learn.
Yeah.
So
Right, okay.
1031s, I went to an
Yeah.
exchange person like you to do it.
Okay, and that's what I found is that they're few and far between the real estate agents that are really educated on this.
That's true.
So you want to go to an expert that actually knows specifically what you want to do, and then weigh your options out. What do you want to do? Again, I would look at trying to do all three strategies, but probably not all at the same time. And I would look at, okay, let's prioritize what I want to do in what order and set these things up and make a long-term plan. And if we make a long-term plan and get the right experts in place and learn what we need to learn, we probably have a much better shot at not ending up on the street when we retire, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are all tax-deferred strategies, the IRA, the HSA. The 1031 is for something that wasn't in your retirement account, it's just your own savings. That's how you tax-defer that money.
Right. And for those out there, we talk about tax deferred and not paying the taxes on things. Your single biggest expense in your life, everybody thinks it's your house. It's your taxes. It's going to be the taxes.
Yes, it is.
That is, it's a hidden expense. And if you can reduce that and mitigate that, you have a lot more of the money that you've worked hard for and earned that you can use to live on. And you're going to need that later in life.
To benefit you.
Right. So we need to wrap this up. Thank you, ladies. So I have been joined today by Dr. Janice Bell of Private Lending Masters, Karen Hall, she's the CEO of UDirect IRA Services, and Debbie Banish is the Vice President of Exchange Resources Incorporated. I am Steve Matley, your host, President of Coast to Coast Equities, Inc. This is Building Solid Foundations. And whatever you do, take the information, go learn, and build the solid foundation of your future wealth. Great leaders are built on solid foundations, so go do something today. We'll see you next time.
Ah